welcome to all of you and a heartfelt namaste. I, Anuradha, would like to thank all of you for liking our YouTube and Spotify channels and writing in your comments and suggestions. If you haven't subscribed to our Spotify channel, please do so that you can listen to all the videos in the audio form at one go. Today, we're going to talk about a festive house, the fifth house. The fifth house is the house of enjoyment. The fifth house is the house of productivity. It is the house of intelligence. So many things associated, beautiful things associated with the fifth house. As in Bhavad Bhavam, it is the ninth from the ninth house. So it also talks about a lot of good luck and it talks about higher education also. The fifth house talks about the use of our knowledge because it is the second from the fourth house. So let's move ahead and see what the fifth house have, what planets, but planets that are there in the fifth house speak of what kind of knowledge, what kind of creativity, and so many other things that we will be able to make out. In the natural zodiac, the fifth house is the house of sun. Sun is the biggest planet in our solar system, and it gives wonderful results. Planet in the fifth house will give wonderful results because there they have the ability to grow and to give a lot of beautification or to give a lot of nice things. So planet in the fifth house talks about, for us, it's creativity. Yes. So that's one of the first things that come into our mind when we talk about a planet in the fifth house, our creative abilities. Children are also creation of union between the opposite genders. So from our marriage, the children we have are said to be created. Well, how we bring them up, how creatively we put them into a horizon, and you know their upbringing that we can see is also seen from the fifth house. So the creativity of creativity, as you mentioned, can be of many types. What we have, the talents that we have within us, is also a form of our creativity. The more we expose that, the more we work with that, the more it will grow on us. And we can make some good use of that talent. The fifth house is said to be the house of intelligence. And with intelligence is associated how you convert what you have, what you know, the knowledge that you have, convert it into a productive use. Hence, the fifth house can also be associated with crisis management. We have a knowledge of certain things in our mind and as a background for us. When we productively use it into good uses and we can think on our toes to be able to handle a situation with our knowledge, that is also intelligence, and hence crisis management can also be seen from our fifth house. The fifth house again is Ishta Devata. Yes, the mantra Shakti that we do with in relation to the Lord, the planet sitting in the fifth house, or the Lord of the fifth house, or where the Lord of the fifth house goes and sits, will tell us as to how far we will be able to work in life. And the fifth house is also a place where the direct offerings that we have, the direct mantras that we have for our Lord. Fifth house can also represent your Kul Devta because it is the ninth from the ninth house. The ninth house talks about your Kulam. Fifth house also talks about your elders. So you could be associated with one of the lords or of one of your grandparents also. And fifth house, and if you have a strong fifth house, your protection in life is guaranteed because your Ishta Devta will always look after you. Again, in the fifth house, we talk about romance, the kind of relationship one has before marriage, and the sweet effects that you see of it can be seen from the fifth house. And fifth house talks about our fortune. We can take our children to be our fortune. The fifth house is a Panfara house, which means that it also talks about your money. The fifth house is typically associated with the speculation. So anybody who has a very strong fifth house can make a lot of money in speculation also. The fifth house talks about government agencies. Let's not forget, as I told you earlier, the fifth house in the natural zodiac is ruled by Sun. Sun rules the government. It rules over the king in the years, in the years gone by, and in today's time it talks about government agencies. So if you have your fifth lord and the 10th lord connected, the chances that you work for a government agency, the chances that you earn business from government agencies is high. The fifth lord, 10th lord connected, it also gives you an ability to earn money from speculative industries and make a name of yourself in that, because the 10th house is also name. So let us see what planets sitting in the fifth house will have to say for you. Supposing this planet is Sun, as I told you earlier, the planet sitting in the fifth house, if it is Sun, it gives you an ability to be in a very high place in a government agency. It also gives you to be in a high place in any multinational company, a big company, and you could be a CEO or a COO, or you could also hold a distinct post in that company. The fifth house is the house where you get well. Rather, it's the house that gives you a sense of well-being. When I said it is all about fun, it is all about joy, it is about happiness. Yes, health is happiness. So it is a house where your health issues, if you have any, and this house is activated, or the planet sitting in this house is activated, you will have a good chance to recoup, because the fifth house of the natural zodiac also has a nakshatra of Bhaga, and Bhag gives you a lot of luck. So here, when we have this fifth house health issues, what happens is this Sun, also known as Dhanvantri, or the doctor of the celestial beings, can make you a good doctor in that area also. So now, when we talk about Moon, Moon is the masses. Moon is the mother. The second house, the fifth house, can talk about the finances of your mother, which can be pretty good if Moon is placed there. If Moon is placed in the fifth house, it talks about your ability, because the fifth house is the house of creativity. It is the house of celebrityhood. So it gives you an opportunity to be creative and to be, working your way into the hearts of the masses. Again, this will depend on the sign and the nakshatra that it is in, because the combinations are too much and you cannot say the same combination working for every person. Again, Moon changes its shape every day. We know that Moon keeps increasing and decreasing. The fifth house is the house of speculation. Speculations, as we know, goes up and down. The fifth house is a house of heartbeat. Heartbeats, we know, is never steady. And the mantra japa that you do has you have to have a annotation attached to it. So this is a house that keeps steadily moving up and down. So that is why the speculative interest that we have is always, the markets we know are always fluctuating. People who have Moon, a strong Moon in the fifth house, can show a lot of interest in speculation and can make money with speculation. Let's not forget, Moon in the fifth house could also mean Moon, which is the owner of Cancer, moving to the house second from it, all about money. So all these combination is available. Then when we talk about Mars, okay, so Mars is a fighter planet, and Mars in the fifth house, from one of its houses, it's Digbali. From one of its houses, it's in the trine. It's a good place for Mars to be in. Even if we're talking from the Kalpurush Kundali, but it's a good place for Mars to be in. It gives you two abilities. Mars is fighter's instinct and Mars is sports. So people who have Mars in the fifth house can be good sportsmen, could be good marksmen, and people who have Mars in the fifth house can be great crisis managers, because they would know how to make a certain, they can take a step back, they can decide how to follow things up and strategize and hit the mark good. When we talk about Mars when we talk about the fifth house and Mercury, Mercury is our thought process. Mercury is intelligence in the sense that it talks about how do we process information to the best of our ability. Mercury is also talks about the markets. So when we see something new coming up in the market, we be it in our business, anything, Mercury holds a great deal of hold over there about getting something new. The ideas a person generates and converts it into good application can be seen with this Mercury in the fifth house. It also gives you good writing skills because it's the third lord of the natural zodiac in the fifth house. And you will see that people who have Mercury in the fifth house know how to write, know how to express themselves, and they are good orators. And it also makes you look young, and it also gives you children who are very swift, fast, and who are very adaptable to change. These children can learn, your children can learn things very fast. When we talk about Jupiter, Jupiter in the fifth house can give us a lot of happiness. It gives us a sense of contentment. Jupiter in the fifth house is not said to be very good for children, Karako Bhavna Shaya, but for that we cannot take the dictum toe to toe because we need to check the D7 also. Even the D7, this Jupiter has certain afflictions or is associated with the Lagna or the fifth house or aspects that those houses, then we can probably make a point that there can be some problems with children, other factors notwithstanding. So when we look at Jupiter in the fifth house, it makes you a great preacher. It makes you a teacher. It makes you somebody whom others can look up to for great advice, because fifth house is wisdom. Fifth house is how to process knowledge, and that is wisdom. And fifth, and how to apply that knowledge is, again, we get Jupiter's blessings. So a person would be a good teacher, a good counselor, a person whom others can come up to and put their contentions or questions to. Fifth house is also about money. So Jupiter is money personified, we know that. So when we talk about fifth house in Jupiter, such people will have good money in life. And fifth house again is celebrityhood. Jupiter in the fifth house makes you a celebrity who has not in terms of as Rahu does, where Rahu is there in the fifth house, it makes you a businessman, a very strong businessman, or it makes you a very speculative businessman. It can also make you a very known celebrity in terms of art, architect, or somebody who's into the showbiz. But Jupiter here is a person who's wise, who's looked upon. He can be an architect. Venus is an architect if you talk about Venus in the fifth house. When we talk about Venus in the fifth house, yes, architect is one point we've seen. Somebody who's very creative, somebody who's more into art, somebody, an artist, temperamental, yes. Into love relationships, many relationships, because the person would be temperamental, attracted to many things in life, and there can be many love relationships in life for people having Venus in the fifth house, because their needs, their desires would often be changing with the art form they would be associated with, and can move on from person to person. But their ability to praise or get their art out on the open would be great, excellent, and they will be doing a good job, at least on the career front, and the ability to make money and friends would be high. If you have Saturn in the fifth house. Now, Saturn in the fifth house could mean that the planet is not very comfortable. Why so? Of the natural Kalpurush Kundali, fifth house belongs to Leo. And Saturn is not very comfortable in the sign of Leo or the sign of the king of the planet Sun, his father. But nevertheless, Saturn is able to deliver his results there. The administrative abilities of a person goes up. The person becomes more responsible, because Magha is the Nakshatra of the natural zodiac, where Saturn, if it's sitting, it gives a person responsibilities more so towards his elders. And if it is in Puba, or Purva Phalguni, in that case, this Saturn becomes a very strong planet in giving you a bhagyodaya or rise in your fortunes, albeit later in life, because it's Saturn which works or which does things at a very slow pace. Then if it's Uttarashad and Saturn go well. The father and son really do go well because they are always on the same principles. Uttarashad is a nakshatra ruled by sun, and it is all about being dutiful. It is all about doing the correct things. Saturn is about administration. Saturn is about doing things the right way. So here in this nakshatra, Saturn will give you a way of doing things in a very correct manner. And when we talk about Saturn in the fifth house, we know that this Saturn will be walking at a slow pace. It will be doing things at a slow pace. But fifth house, that is our house of becoming a CEO. This is a house where we become a good position in any administrative department in a big organization. It will take time. Saturn is Kal. Saturn is time. So it will take time for you to reach that designation. But that is a place you surely will reach. Saturn is cold. Saturn is far away from the sun. So yes, you might get a distant, or you might be transferred, because the fifth house is also the house of transfers. So you might be transferred into a place which is away from your home or your place of work, the main office, but you will be given good jurisdiction duties. All these things we can see when Saturn is running its period and is placed in the fifth house. And finally, we come to Rahu and Ketu. So Rahu, when Rahu is in the fifth house, that makes you very strong a celebrity, as I said earlier, because Rahu is the medium that we use nowadays. It's the virtual medium, and it's television, it's showbiz. And the fifth house also relates to being larger than life. That's the celebrityhood attached to the fifth house. Rahu and it together gives you an ability to create an illusion that you have a persona larger than life. You may not be having that, but it gives you the ability to create that persona. Again, it also gives you a strong desire. If you're not, then it gives you a strong desire to be one. And if you work on that path, you really might achieve it. Ketu, when it's there in the fifth house, Ketu is prosperity. Ketu is mantra shakti. Ketu is worship of Ganesha or Kali. Ketu in these houses, in the fifth house, gives you all this, and it gives you the ability, the divine insight, just like Jupiter, to be able to see things. Ketu, for people who have Ketu in their fifth house, they also have the ability for fortune telling or the occult. That is a very strong point that you see. And for people who have Jupiter in their fifth house, one very beautiful thing is that these people, whenever they say anything, they can be good soothsayers, because when they say things, and if they do Vak Shakti, then in that case, they will always be giving good news to others, which will always come out to be true. So let's take a look at a few examples as to how these things, as we see. The Zeta zone, she has a moon in the fifth house. And as I said, when she came into the industry, she was looked upon as one of the very beautiful, ravishing beauties. And she also exerted a strong hold over the public, not to mention that being in the Uttarabhadra Nakshatra, she also was able to have a great relationship with her husband. Then, when we take up the chart of Yehudi Menuhin, Yehudi Menuhin has his Mercury and Sun in the fifth house, an exalted Sun at that, and that too in Ashwini Nakshatra, gives him a great aptitude for learning things. And as Mercury is in Bharani Nakshatra, understanding and processing those activities and becoming a star in his own field. He was an amazing musician who had left behind a legacy. Louis May Alcott, as we all know, was one of the very inspiring writers. And when you have Mercury in the fifth house, along with Venus, you get to inculcate a lot of feelings, get to inculcate a lot of softer emotions in your writing skills. As I had told earlier, when Venus is in Fifth house, it talks about your artistic talents, and Mercury gives you a great sense of writing. Her books were known for her emotions, and she did a great job with portraying the society as it were at that time. Warren Buffett has his Rahu in the fifth house. Rahu, as I told you, can create illusions. Rahu can give a person an ability to be speculative and be quick in deciding what you really want to and then go for the kill. Because here this Rahu is in Ashwini Nakshatra. Ashwini Nakshatra, if anything, is quick and swift. So they know how to cut the losses, where to cut the losses. And this nakshatra gives you a knowledge, an insider's knowledge, which has worked very beautifully in Warren Buffett's case. When we see the house that it is in and the sign is a fire sign. So this Rahu has always been on a very futuristic mode, thinking and planning for the future and doing very swift business. That is why Warren Buffett is known as one of the best investors to follow the market over, and his quotes has been all over the scene. And not just the marketability or the share markets that he's very famous for. He plays an instrument which it's a violin kind of an instrument, and he's known to have been played it in many a circles. It's just he's very well accomplished with it. So we see the creative idea also, and his ability to deal with his creativity productively can also be seen. This placement of Rahu in the fifth house, because it gave him an ability to showcase his talents to others also, not just in the speculative field, but also in the creative field. And last but not the least, as I talk about the Dhanvantri or the celestial physician, Samuel Hahnemann, who is known to be the one who started homeopathy medicine, a German, has a son, an exalted ninth lord, Dhanvantri, sitting right there in the fifth house, making him a very well-known name years after he passed away. So, since we can understand that these planets in the fifth house bring us a lot of fortune, they bring us a lot of good things because it is a house of happiness. Not only us, they bring it for others around us also. So if you have a planet in the fifth house, please do check out how it operates and what it leaves as a legacy, because the fifth house is also the house of legacy. How does it leave a legacy for you? Till we meet with you again, stay safe and be happy. Thank you.
Please hit the bell icon for fresh updates. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on the videos, and please subscribe to our channel.